Hi, I'm Penny from Penny Plays and I collect vintage family board games. So you think of the likes of Monopoly, Cluedo, and things of that ilk, really. During lockdown, we've been playing a lot of vintage board games with friends and family, but we've been doing it over Zoom and Skype, FaceTime, and other video platforms because obviously we haven't been able to get together in person. So today I want to talk to you about how that is possible, so that you can all try and play family board games at Christmas this year. So really, it's incredibly simple. You need to have a few house rules though. There's got to be trust between you. You don't want to be trying to play Monopoly with someone that you know cheats all the time just because they're so determined to win. Let's put that aside for just one year. So what you need to do is one person needs to have two cameras. That really is the crux of all of this. It's not actually that difficult to do that if you think about it. Most of us have got a camera in our phone, and if you've got a tablet, laptop, or something like that as well, then you've got the two cameras that you require. So first of all, imagine that we're using Zoom to start with. You set up your Zoom meeting, but you go into that meeting twice. Once as the main part of you, who is facing the camera and talking to the other people, much in the way I am now, and you've got the playing board at your house. So you then have a second camera, say it's a phone camera, and you quite simply need to position your phone facing down at the board. Now, you obviously need to get it at the right height. You could do this with a tripod of some sort. I've got a friend who teaches online. She actually does it by balancing her iPad on top of a vase so it points down at a piece of paper she's using. But that's all you need to do. Make sure that you mute the microphone on that and also turn the volume down. That way you don't get feedback between having two versions of the call happening in your proximity. That's the main tech that you need. That's it. Everyone else just needs to have Zoom up, or you can do it with Skype or FaceTime video, WhatsApp video, whatever you fancy using, really. That's the main thing. So one person has two cameras and they are the person that have the board, okay? Now, it could be easier if both of you have the same board game, or all three parties playing, or however many, then each person could get their own copy of the board out and they could have the same coloured counters and move them round every time. Not always possible, so you kind of think about one person as having the master version of the board with the counters on and that. Whoever's got that master version of the board also really needs to run the bank. And the way we've been doing this is whoever's got the board, they have their normal money and they use that when they have to pay for things or when they win money in the game. But they also then have piles of money for the other players who are taking part. So say we had Gary taking part and Lee, two of our friends who we play regularly with, I'd have a pile of money with a post-it note on it saying Gary, another pile of money with a post-it note on it saying Lee, and every time they pay for something or they receive some money, I'd use their pile of money to do that. At the same time, though, those remote players were also keeping a ledger of what they had, so they'd simply write it down. At the start of the game, imagine they start with £1,500. They go round, when they pass go in Monopoly, they collect 200, they'd simply write down plus 200, that makes 1,700. Then they land on a square and they have to pay something, and they just jot it all down there, really. Again, incredibly simple. Where the trust comes in is things like picking up cards when things happen. So, like in Monopoly, I'm using that as an example because it's a game we all know. If you land on chest or on chance or community chest, the person who's got the board normally picks up the cards and will show it on the camera to whoever it is and say, oh, this is what you've got, this is what you've got to do. It's an element of trust, but it's just something you have to do. If all parties playing have their own versions of the board game, you could mix it up a little bit by saying, oh, well, you use your pack of cards when it's your turn to pick something up, and as long as they're shuffled and that, you will get some repetition. It could mean that everyone who's got a board ends up holding one of those get out of jail free cards, but so what? It doesn't really matter, does it? It's a game at the end of the day. The other thing is, in something like Monopoly, where you're going and buying properties and everything, normally you hold the title deeds and you can physically see which properties you own. Again, if you've got your own set, you can pull out the right title deeds, have them in front of you so you know what you've got. If not, again, on their ledgers, the remote players, as we called them, were simply writing down what they had so that they could keep track of it that way. As I say, it's all simple, but sometimes you just need to go, oh yeah, I could just use a second camera. It's easy, really. And it is. It's not that difficult to set up. During both of the lockdowns here in the UK, we've played board games pretty much every other week online. We've done a lot of the classics. We've done Monopoly. We've done things like Game of Life, Go for Broke, Careers. We've played some word games. There's a game called Frenetic, which is based on the periodic table. Really easy to play online, actually, doing it remotely like that. There's some games which don't really work so well. We haven't tried Cluedo. I couldn't quite get my head around how you can have cards put in an envelope and show them secretly to people. That doesn't really work. Um, there's other games that we probably haven't discovered yet that would work really well, but it's just really a bit of trial and error. You can be a bit smart before you play the game. Often what I do is I take a photograph of the board and send that to someone beforehand so they've got a high-res image of the board so they can look at it and think, oh, well, if I'm going to go round, I've got this coming up or this stretch here and I know that so-and-so owns this property, that sort of thing. It also helps to take a photograph of the rules and email that through to the remote players as well so that everyone can read the rules beforehand. It's not as easy as passing the rule book round as you play, really, when you're doing it remotely like this. The only other thing I'd say is if each player can have some dice, however many you need for that game, and if they don't have real dice, the other thing that we found is quite useful is you can get various free dice apps that go on your phone. So simply do that, and they actually then announce what you've rolled. So the remote players would simply tap on it, it would roll the dice, and it would go 7. And it means that we then, at the side with the board, can actually move the playing piece around 7, and it just takes, speeds things up a little bit. So all that is completely possible. You're not going to get out of the arguments over Monopoly just because of a lockdown and family bubbles not, taking everyone in and all that sort of thing. You can still have fun playing board games even when you're remote. I've written a blog post about all this. I'll put a link to it down below so you can read it if that needs to make sense. If you've got any questions, please feel free to drop me a comment down below and I'll try and answer them for you. Also, if you've got any suggestions of games that you think you could play remotely, and by this I realise that there are loads of games that you can play digitally. I totally get that, okay? But for some people, they just want an old-fashioned board game, especially if you've got an older relative who maybe isn't quite au fait with doing online gaming, but they've managed to master Zoom during 2020. Then just get them up on Zoom, help them feel involved in the game, help make it feel like as normal a Christmas as you can. Anyway, I hope this video has been some help to you. Over the rest of December, I hope to put up further videos in which I feature some of the vintage board games that we've been playing over the last 12 months, talking a little bit about them and also talking about which ones lend themselves really well to being played online in this way. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure that you click like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!